to protect the baby. And most of the people, not only in Nigeria, but in different countries, they like to throw it away because they don't know the importance of it. And this is the first immunization of the child. So,
okay, go ahead. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, go ahead too.
Okay, beyond the benefits you've talked about, we're also told that nursing mothers who breastfeed, it can also serve as contraceptive. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah, and it has to be exclusive. That's why we can't give any other things from birth up to 6 months. Breastfeeding has to be exclusive. When we said exclusive breastfeeding means only breast milk without any other liquid, any other fluid, even water. So when it is done that way, it can also protect against another pregnancy during that period. But when it is not exclusive, we can't say it can protect pregnancy. So we have to be clear on that.
Our focus this morning is on exclusive breastfeeding because that's what the WHO is recommending, and that's why we're looking at benefits of exclusive breastfeeding to the mother and child. We've seen people talk about health experts talk about the need for the mother, the nursing mother, to continuously do that for 6 months to avoid the killer diseases. Beyond that, how does it help the mother?
Thank you very much. First of all, it's important to know that Nigerian mothers breastfeed their children. Almost all mothers breastfeed their children. 97% of our children are breastfed at one time or the other. Another point is that most of the children at 6 months also get breast milk and water. And that is a challenge. About 47% of children get just breast milk and water alone. That becomes a challenge to exclusive breastfeeding. Now, to the benefit of exclusive breastfeeding to the mother, first, it starts with early initiation. The child should be put to breast within 1 hour of the child's birth. As a matter of fact, the procedure, it's usually a very interesting moment. Because when you deliver the child, you just lay the child on the mother's chest. The baby crawls to the mother's breast. It's just natural. Nobody directs the baby. And at least he gets to perceive the mother's smell. So bonding begins at that point. And that's one very big importance, bonding between the mother and the child. Secondly, when the child is exclusively breastfed, especially that early initiation, the first point is that prolactin stimulates the release of prolactin, which leads to the manufacture of breast milk, production of breast milk. It stimulates the release of oxytocin, which stimulates the expression of breast milk. But beyond that, oxytocin also helps the woman's womb to contract, therefore preventing bleeding. Now you understand that hemorrhage, especially postpartum hemorrhage, is one of the highest killers of women, maternal mortality, one of the high causes of maternal mortality. So that will contribute to reduction of maternal mortality. So apart from the fact that it creates bonding between mother and child, it helps the woman, protects her from blood loss. It helps quick expression or expulsion of the placenta. Again, when a woman exclusively breastfeeds in the first 6 months, it helps her quickly restore her weight. So it prevents the woman from, that's what most women get afraid of when they get pregnant. Oh, if I have my baby, I begin to lose weight. Exclusive breastfeeding helps her restore her weight to close to what it was before she got pregnant.
What's the logic? Because we know that when you're exclusively breastfeeding, you are advised to eat as much as you can, of course, the right food. So
it's not, well, not exactly so. A woman just eats what is necessary for her In fact, her diet doesn't necessarily have to increase because she's breastfeeding. The truth is that the woman is primed to nourish her baby. Whether she eats or not, the baby gets that same nourishment from the breast milk, unless she becomes really severely malnourished. That's when it affects the breast.
Dr. Isopo, when you say, I mean, I said exclusive breastfeeding, water, no water. Is it been suggested that throughout the 6-month period, no water at all?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Now, I'll tell you this. Breast milk contains is 90% water. So all the water the baby needs in that first 6 months of life is in the breast milk. Therefore, you don't need to give the baby water. Now, there are disadvantages of giving water. Number one, first let me start like this. The stomach of a newborn baby is the size of a little nut. Like, let me use an example. The average bitter cola. 5 meals. So when you give the child water, you displace breast milk. The child loses nutrient. Even as the child grows up, at 1 month, his stomach is just about the size of an egg. So when you give water, you also further displace nutrient. That's one. Two, water, you can't guarantee that the water is clean. So giving the child water, you may be introducing germs. Germs will result in diseases. Yeah. 2 major killers of children under 5 is pneumonia and diarrhea. And because we can't guarantee the water, not even the borehole we drink. Thirdly, when you give water, you reduce the chances of the baby benefiting from the immunity that he gets from the mother, which is in the breast milk. As a matter of fact, if you notice most immunizations, or most often, babies who are breastfed don't even have to have malaria because they are getting their protection from their mother's breast in that first 6 months.
Yeah, so what happens when the child is hicking up? You know, in the past, when we were young, we used to see mothers and women do it. They would look for some white thread, you know, put it on the child's, on the baby's head. But I mean, later, modern science, they got to learn that. Look, if a person is hicking up, give the person water. That's one.
Not just on the head, case like the fontanel.
Yeah, they put it there. You know, that's no longer working. I'm sure you would have experienced this yourself. But, so when a baby is hicking up, how do you then treat that? That's one. Two, what is the role of gripe water? You don't see, I've not seen it for many years now, but you see gripe water. When do you administer that? You shouldn't give gripe water first 6 months or what?
No, first of all, gripe water is medicine, it's medication. Yes. It only has to be prescribed. Now, it's important for us to note that exclusive breastfeeding also extends to prescription medicines. If a doctor prescribes drugs, like children are allowed to take drops in that first 6 months. They are allowed to take syrups or drugs that are prescribed by the doctor. Now, to your question, when the child is hicking up, what do? You give water, right? The breast milk has 90% water, so why don't you put the child back to breast? So he gets the water.
If the baby kicks off the breast, sometimes you want to put this on the breast.
Oh, great. Now, here is the second point. Yes. You put the thread in the baby's fontanel, and then the baby recovers. You have already commented here that had no significance. It was just a myth, which means whether you put it there or not, the baby is going to recover.
But funny enough, the babies do stop, you know.
Exactly. So that means it had nothing to do with the thread. It was just the fact that the baby just stopped hicking.
Yeah. Well, another point, let's also thrash this out. Going back, because it's been advertised and it's been said and advocated that, yes, exclusive breastfeeding, it can help prevent childhood killer diseases. Now, what happened in the past when, as we recall, mothers and women oftentimes, lost their babies, the so-called Ogbanje phenomenon? You had some women, who needed to have multiple births to get one survival. But in such cases, it turned out that the childhood killer diseases were often the culprit. So how come? That was in an age, when mothers didn't know anything about infant formula. So why did the baby breast milk then not stave off those childhood killer diseases in those days, as we're advertising now that exclusive breast milk, will protect a child against these killer diseases.
Thank
Dr.
you. Thank you
Sokun.
very much. We need to get something clear here. There is a difference between breastfeeding and exclusive breastfeeding.
Yes.
I just, in my first statement, I said that 97% to 98% of children in this country are breastfed. So Nigeria is a breastfeeding nation. Another fact is that 71% of children are predominantly breastfed. When we talk about predominant breastfeeding, is they are given breast milk and other liquid-based well, not formulas now.
Liquid.
That one is after the 6 months. But they are given either water-based fruit juice or ritual water and all of that. That's predominant breastfeeding, and about 71% of people do that. But the point we are emphasizing and advocating is the exclusive breastfeeding. Exclusive breastfeeding is giving the baby breast milk only in the first 6 months, no water, nothing else. Now that is the one that confers protection, and most people do not know this. And if you, even now, the exclusive breastfeeding rate in the urban areas in Nigeria is higher, almost twice as high as the exclusive breastfeeding rate in the rural areas. And of course, the rural areas is our traditional way of doing things, where mothers think that the baby must get water, baby must get gripe water, baby must get ritual water, or is it holy water, anointing water, and all of that, so that the baby can survive and be protected from it.
Is it feasible to have exclusive breastfeeding for 6 months? I mean, you're looking at 180 days.
Yeah, it's feasible because even it is not high in Nigeria, but 25% of mothers are doing exclusive breastfeeding. And they recommended, if you can see the target set by WHO now and the World Health Assembly, is if we can at least reach 50% of exclusive breastfeeding by 2025. That's why we are investing and we are sustaining all work together to see how we can reach that target. But it's possible and feasible.
Let me look at, because earlier on when Mr. Isokmu was talking about, he mentioned initiation. So I would like us to look at, initiation. I would like us to look at the behavioral pattern of nursing mothers now. At what age can a nursing mother, initiate exclusive breastfeeding? And are there inhibitions?
At which age?
Yes, at what period?
No.
At what period?
No, within 1 hour of birth,
yes,
the baby should
after
start
delivery.
breastfeeding.
Or immediately. Dr. Chris mentioned it. After delivery, immediately, you have to put the baby on the breast.
But there are times when a woman goes through the cesarean section, and there are other, health challenges that prevents the woman from, starting off finishing.
Those are the exceptions. But even at that, I just told you, the miracle, you need to see the sight, it's beautiful. You put the baby on the mother's chest, the baby crawls to the breast. He finds
the baby cannot be crawling. The baby groups,
right, great. I mean, he just wriggles to the breast. He finds it. It's natural. I mean, who taught him where the breast is? He knows that's where he should go to. It's natural. And when you say, is it feasible to practice exclusive breastfeeding? In Nigeria, it is possible. And this is why I say so. Exclusive breastfeeding rate right now is 25%. 47% of children get breast milk and water only. So if we can convince our women to stop giving their children water within that first 6 months, then our exclusive breastfeeding rate will grow.
Maternity leave is usually for 3 months for a mother who is working. And after that, you're expected to return to work. Yes, we have seen, instances where creches or breastfeeding bays have been created. But for those mothers who do not have that opportunity, let's say from month 4, what do you do? I mean, how do you overcome that obstacle of saying, look, a mother's got to go to work, and when she's at work, the mother doesn't have the opportunity of breastfeeding the baby?
All right.
Yeah.
Now,
How do you deal with
Christine?
Okay, yes. It's possible even for working mothers to continue exclusive breastfeeding when she's at work. Why? Because there is a technique to do expression of breast milk. So a mother can express breast milk and leave it at home. So someone who is at home can keep doing the baby the breast milk of the mother, even the mother is not there.
No, go over that again. Express means that to press it. Where do you put it?
You may do it manually, Kingsley. You may do it manually, and of course there you have some, you know, I don't want to say tools.
A suction pump.
There
or
is
something.
a technique. There is a technique to do it either manually, and there is appropriate.
But it's the same feeding bottle that we are seeking to avoid in the first 6 months. That where will you put the this thing? Where does
You
it
don't
come
use
from?
feeding bottle. If you see this, if you saw the clips that introduced this program, you saw the woman using spoon and cup to feed the baby with breast milk. So even when you express it into a cup, the baby is going to be fed with a spoon, because that bottle feeding is a very big harbinger of diseases, of infection. So it's not, it shouldn't be encouraged. But this is the other point. You said a woman after 4 months, she goes back
After
to
3
work.
months.
After 3 months, she goes back. In the public service, federal public service, it is 4 months, 16 weeks.
Okay.
Private sector is 12 weeks. Yeah. Now, there are things in place. First, there are also rules that says the woman is allowed an hour to breastfeed her child. We encourage that big establishments, for example, establishment like NTA should have a crèche. It should have, such establishment should have breastfeeding rooms.
Who takes the cost implication of the crèche? Who bears the burden of the?
I'm sure the mothers, like in the federal secretariat, there is a crèche. Mothers pay a token. People are there to take care of their children. They go from time to time down there, feed their children, and go back to their office.
Okay, let me ask. Sorry,
just still on this, on the mother. No, but the crèche or the alternative breastfeeding, even while let's say breastfeeding by remote. Remote means when the mother has gone to work, you know, the breast milk.
It's not remote.
The breast. No, wait. The breast milk is there. Now, so that you put it in a cup.
Yes.
Now let's see again. This is what is realistic. Milk is said to be a harbinger of bacteria. So how do you preserve that breast milk which the mother has expressed
you
into
don't
a
need to
cup?
demonstrate, Kingsley. Stop touching your bed.
I'm just for the benefit of our viewers. That's not. I mean, okay, you demonstrate. So yes, how do you preserve the milk? How do you protect it from, again, I mean, just some form of, shall we say, some local pasteurization, so the breast milk doesn't get contaminated while the mother is at work. And then, yes, if there's no refrigeration, what happens?
Yeah. First of all, hygiene also had to go with. The content of that breast milk have to be clean, very clean. And that breast milk can stay 6 to 8 hours without any problem. It can be also put in the refrigerator, but it also even in normal temperature.
Room temperature.
Yes, it can stay 6 to 8 hours.
Okay, let me ask a very interesting question. And somebody here, I wouldn't mention names, asked this question, but I think it's very relevant. Does the size and shape of the breast, affect the ability of the nursing mother to produce quality breast milk, colostrum?
The answer is an emphatic no. The mother is suited for her baby. She gets the baby her body can take care of. So if she gives birth to a baby, she is primed to nourish her baby. As a matter of fact, I can tell you that breast milk is not the same constituent throughout the life course of the child. It continues to tailor it as the child grows to meet the nutritional needs of the child from age to age. That is why, for example, at the beginning, it starts with colostrum. Colostrum is very rich in protein and antibodies. From there, it grows, it begins to change, transform, and so as long as the mother eats normally, she's not malnourished, the quality of breast milk that comes from her breast is enough to
But
feed her
sometimes
child.
some women complain that they don't have enough milk. They're not producing enough milk.
Yes, the real reason for that is that most women do not know how to breastfeed. You might be surprised.
Yeah.
Breastfeeding is an art. It has to be learned. It's not just about put the breast to the baby's mouth and then the baby starts suckling. In most cases, mothers, how do we put it, they nipple feed their child instead of breastfeed their child. What it means is that they just put the nipple in the baby's mouth and the baby continues to suck at the nipple. However, there is a proper way to attach your baby to the breast. The nipple should be should touch the roof of the baby's mouth, number one. Number two, the baby's mouth has to be wide open. Thirdly, the lower lip of the baby has to be turned outwards while the breast is in his mouth. Fourthly, the areola, the black portion of the breast, most of it has to be in the baby's mouth. In fact, you only see a part of it only above the baby's mouth. Fourthly, the baby's chin should touch the breast and the nose should be free of the breast.
So the baby doesn't choke while...
Yes.
Okay.
That way, the baby is expressing the milk into his mouth and not sucking. Because when he's sucking from the nipples, not much breast milk comes out. And then the baby continues to suck, and the mother says, my baby is not getting it, the breast milk is not enough for the baby. It's because she hasn't really learned to put the baby to the breast.
Are you suggesting, Dr. Sopunwo, that every nursing mother necessarily has the full and right amount of breast milk? Would there not be instances where there might be insufficiency of breast milk?
Absolutely.
And therefore, how does a nursing mother boost breast milk production?
There is hardly any reason, there's hardly no reason why a mother cannot have enough breast milk for her child. Just like animals breastfeed their children, they have enough breast milk for their cubs and all that. Human beings have enough. I've just told you some of the reasons is that first, the baby did not start breastfeeding immediately, so breast milk production is not stimulated early enough. Secondly, she doesn't know how to put the baby to breast. Everybody just thinks that breast milk, put the breast in the baby's mouth.
I think this question is very germane because I have seen or witnessed a nursing mother being told, by her, doctor or advised by her doctor, to, boost, the breast, the milk she's administering to the baby because she's incapable of producing enough breast milk. Is it structural?
I think what Dr. Chris said is what all mothers are supposed to practice, and also is what all doctors or midwives are supposed also to advise to their mothers to do, because the fact to put the baby on the breast as often as possible.
Where do they learn that? Is it during antenatal?
Is that fact which made breast milk to be produced enough. No.
So are you saying that frequent lactation stimulates breast milk production?
The
Yes.
more the baby breastfeeds, the more milk the mother produces.
Yeah.
Another point, I'm a medical doctor. Not many doctors actually know about lactation. We also have lactation professionals, lactation consultants, people who are supposed to teach mothers how to breastfeed. So most times they go to the doctor and say, "Doctor, my baby is not getting enough breast milk." And the doctor says, "Oh, really? All right, go and boost your breast milk." Because the doctor has not gone further to find out, has she really been able to attach the baby to the breast milk?
Yeah.
So here now, just last week, within this week, we have launched a strategy, social and behavior change strategy document that outlines how we will engage different levels of influencers to be able to address these issues. The health worker, the grandmothers, the husbands, the community leaders, and all the likes.
All right, but what is wrong with infant formula?
Exactly, because it's still being sold, it's still being advertised, it's still being marketed.
What is wrong with it?
A lot is wrong. Number one, let me start with the economic disadvantage.
Yeah.
on an average, in a month, you spend between 35 to 100,000 naira on formula monthly. Number two, because the mother cannot afford that kind of money, she over dilutes the formula. So the baby doesn't really get nutrient.
Where will you spend 100,000? How much is a tin now? I don't know.
How many, depending on the age of the child, how many tins does a child take in a day? I mean, sorry, in a month.
In a month.
Or in a month.
Let's say in a month.
Exactly. Thirdly, formula feed, the process of preparing it, there is always the chance of introducing infections.
Yeah.
And therefore, there is a higher risk of the child falling sick as often as possible.
So how do we find, you've established that, and we do know that we have these formulas right there in the market available for women, nursing mothers to procure. So how do we, stop that? How do we begin to implement the code? Because there's a code, and NAFDAC is supposed to be implementing that code.
Yeah.
So how do we get this code to be implemented?
Good. First of all, we must understand that formula feed can also be used. Doctors can prescribe it when in very rare exceptions where a woman cannot breastfeed her child, or for example, a woman that has multiple pregnancies, 3, 4, and there is no wet nurse to assist her. But the first step we did was to enact the code and prevent the advertisement of formulas. So you don't get formulas being advertised. Secondly, the code is to ensure that they don't inappropriately market. Now, unfortunately, you need to enforce that. But the enforcement is a challenge, and that is what NAFDAC is supposed to do. But NAFDAC is also waking up. The first thing is, it's not just the responsibility of NAFDAC, it's the responsibility of everybody. So NAFDAC is sensitizing Nigerians. And of course, I'd like to use the same opportunity to sensitize all Nigerians that when you see any formula producer approaching mothers to sell or to market their formula feed, that you should report such organization to NAFDAC.
Well, again, when then is infant, you've already mentioned one instance, namely in extreme cases where a mother is unable to properly lactate. But otherwise, at what age is infant formula advisable?
No, not advised at any age, but after 6 months, a baby starts complementary food. There are complementary food in the market, commercial ones, and of course we encourage the use of our local complementary food, as long as they are adequate. Adequacy here talks about it being spread across the different food groups to be able to provide the necessary nutrients for the child.
Well, what kind of challenge, I mean, is the WHO and then the other advocates, what kind of challenge are you facing from the producers of infant milk? That's a huge industry.
Yeah, of course, the challenge is like a fact, because those manufacturers also want to sell their products.
That's right.
So if they want to sell their product, what they will do is just to advertise those products. And sometimes when you advertise your product, there is some product for less than 6 months. So if you promote and advertise product for less than 6 months, then it's compromising breastfeeding. So those are some challenges, and that's why NAFDAC is supposed to do a lot of efforts to be sure those advertisements are not made, are not done. So, and then together with partners, Federal Ministry of Health and other implementing partners, then we have to continue to promote and support breastfeeding.
Okay.
Sorry, Claire, I just wanted to put this on a comparative basis. I mean, you are a staff of UNICEF.
Yes.
And obviously you're not Nigerian.
Sure.
What experience do we have from other countries with regard to exclusive breastfeeding, and what lessons are there that Nigerian mothers can possibly learn from elsewhere?
It is really not different. These kind of challenges are almost the same, because there is some behavior,
Exactly.
and everybody and each country have its own specific behavior, myth, beliefs, cultural beliefs, and all of them, sometimes they are compromising breastfeeding. So that's why social and behavior change communication is very important.
Yes,
at all
talking about
levels.
behavioral pattern, because I was made to understand that, of course, of the 25% progress that Nigeria has been able to make in 10 years, in terms of initiation and all that, some geographical parts of this country are doing worse than others. What do you think accounts for that? What kind of habits or behaviors or practices that?
Well, talking specifically about breastfeeding and exclusive breastfeeding, the reason is largely cultural. And it's cultural in the sense that people don't believe that babies can survive without water. Secondly, educational level, because exclusive breastfeeding is higher among the educated mothers than those that have no education. So a society that has more mothers with more higher education, like secondary school education, tend to embrace exclusive breastfeeding more than the others. Thirdly, some societies have a higher influence of the mother, grandmother, where, there are some societies where the grandmother has more influence on the woman than other societies. And such grandmothers don't want to change, and it's very difficult, which is why our strategy is about targeting. Before now, it used to be target the mother. But now, you know that there are people who influence her that will prevent her from being able to do this. So we now target those influencers, the grandmother, her husband, because the husband needs to support her. Even if the grandmother or her mother-in-law is insisting, if her husband supports her, she will have enough courage to do that. The community needs to be sensitized. Once the community is sensitized and the leaders are up for it, it is also easier to now influence the mother.
Well, Doctor, one of the points, you raised this a number of occasions now in the course of this conversation, namely, Nigeria appears to have a higher rate of exclusive breastfeeding in the urban areas than in the rural areas. And presumably in the urban areas, you have mothers who are probably more psychedelic in orientation. Now, how has this come about that we're having higher breastfeeding rate versus the myth in the past that, look, if you breastfed, then your breast might sag, and then, unless you put on falsies, you might not have that attraction. How does this
I think there are many factors. First, number one, in the urban area, they have access to media. Like we are talking about exclusive breastfeeding now. The woman in the rural area is not likely to be watching us, but the woman in the urban area will be watching, and she is more likely to be better educated. Thirdly, is the fact that the urban society is thirdly is the fact that she's more likely to deliver in the hospital, where she will get such information. Because we know that the rates are higher among women who deliver in hospitals or those who are attended to by skilled bed attendants than those who deliver at home. In the urban area, she's more likely to deliver in the hospital or be attended to by a skilled bed attendant than those in the rural areas where you have the traditional bed attendant who doesn't believe that she has to be the baby has to be immediately put to breast, or who doesn't believe that the baby should be breastfed without water.
So how can we close that gap? Do we have enough social support groups to attend to some of these nursing mothers in the rural areas?
The strategy that the Honorable Minister for Health launched on Tuesday outlines how we tackle it at different levels, at the urban area and in the rural areas, how we target the different influencers, how we engage the media to address this.
All right, Dr. Isopo, thank you very much. And of course, Mrs. Christine Kaligiwa, we have reactions that have come in from our viewers, and we are taking their tweets right away. Festus Akimboyewa tweets, says, Nigerians have appetite for imported attitudes, including attitudes that deter breastfeeding for more than a few weeks. Now, this must change. Right.
Abu Hanifa tweets, God's decree, it's not negotiable. He commanded women to breastfeed their children for 2 years, but due to our own desire, we treat them anyhow.
Another one again from Festus Akimboyewa says, in Nigerian society, especially including Nigerian women, see women's breast as a sexual object, which is hindering breastfeeding. Again, he writes, this must change.
Mm-hmm. That's an important point to note there, Mr. Sokun, and of course our friend here. Now, Festus Akimboyewa again tweets, government and health practitioners should raise awareness about the benefits of breastfeeding, especially its unparalleled brain-building benefits.
Anebo Chukwebuka tweets, foreign multinational companies are not resting because of profitability. The campaign on breastfeeding should be encouraged. And
Shakiro tweets, please ask our female guest if she's married, has she obeyed the law in breastfeeding her babies exclusively as a working class?
Yes, I did.
Yes, I did. Okay, that's a response straight away to that tweet. Now, Habila Kwara Zakshi tweets, in the quest to ensure exclusive breastfeeding, what supplement can a sick mother use to ensure the health of the baby? Dr. Isokmo, I take that again. In the quest to ensure exclusive breastfeeding, what supplement can a sick mother use to ensure the health of the baby?
Thank you. I think that question came very aptly because we haven't mentioned a woman who is HIV positive. Can she breastfeed? As long as she is on antiretroviral therapy, a woman who is HIV positive can breastfeed her child exclusively for 6 months and continue breastfeeding up to 2 years. The baby is protected because she's on antiretroviral therapy. But if she's not on therapy, she cannot breastfeed. But a sick mother as well can breastfeed her child because the breast milk is still adequate for the nourishment of the child. What supplements can she take? Actually, breast milk doesn't necessarily require supplementation.
Yeah.
The woman just needs to eat well, have adequate nutrition.
What utility is it? Again, what I used to see it in the past, I don't know whether it still happens now. When the mother, that's the biological mother, is not available, maybe the grandmom of the baby, that's to say the mother of the mother, the baby is crying, the grandmom will put her own breast in the baby's mouth. Does that serve any purpose? I'm sure you must have seen it. You are smiling, Doctor.
Yeah.
You remember in those days?
Those days, yes. But you know, it's an interesting thing that a grandmother can actually begin to relactate.
A grandmother?
Yes. We have seen instances where the mother died, newborn baby, here is a grandmother, and she puts the baby to breast. As long as the baby continues to suck, breast milk starts coming out. That's relactation. So it's possible. Because the message is about once you start sucking, it stimulates the production of prolactin. And then prolactin stimulates the production of milk. That is the principle. It's a reflex.
All right, but of course that would not be for the husband.
You know, that's what I want to ask, because Kingsley, just before, because there's a belief that the breast milk is for everybody, you know, including, you know,
including who?
The man and all that. But
I'm on solid food now. All right. Mrs. Christine, can you give a clear? No, well, I'm on solid food. You know, I'm on solid food, so we're going to end the breastfeeding, especially breastfeeding discussion right now. As I'm sure other gentlemen who are watching this program are on the session.
That's debatable anyway. I think we should call for a break now.
All right. We're calling for a break, but of course, we'd like to thank two guests who have been with us, Mrs. Christine Kaligiwa, nutrition specialist with UNICEF. Thank you for being on our discussion program this morning.
Thank you for inviting us.
We also appreciate Dr. Chris Isokmo, Head of Nutrition, Federal Ministry of Health. Thank you for being here with us on the program this morning.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
All right. So that does it for breastfeeding and all the issues surrounding the talk about exclusive breastfeeding and its tremendous benefits. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll be dealing with another subject matter.
Yes, we are all guilty of this. We judge people based on ethnic group.
My father only took a look at your picture, not picture, so, and shouted, hey, see this tribal mark.
We judge people based on the area they reside.
Samson comes from a place where kidnapping is rampant.
We judge people before we have a chance to know them closely.
Have you gone to dog place to look for your dog? Unbelievable.
Stereotypes, another rib-cracking episode of your #1 television comedy series. Professor John Bull explores and explodes this terrible societal ill. Keep a date with Professor John Bull's series and laugh like never before.
Where you come from, sir?
Come from Umeu.
Hey! Umeu!
What's up? Why the shout?
Those people sabi thief goat. Over and out.
Brought to you by Glow.
The largest data network, Glow Unlimited.
Now waiting be this. Hey, smart gun over here. Don't fit again. Everybody want make I put them on top. You remember AJ smart connect me when I charge 100 naira, then go give me 800 naira. You don't upgrade now. Every end of the month, then go give me back all my recharge. Why don't recharge? As that time on us. From this one, no, we just jar out. That now over jar back to send down.
Buy an Airtel SIM and get back all your recharges as data bonus by month end on Smart Connect.
Airtel, the smartphone network.
All right, you're welcome back. But if you just joined us, it's Good Morning Nigeria. We're reaching you live still on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Now we're getting into our second topic for discussion this morning, which has to do with sports. You know, how to rejuvenate grassroots sports, particularly the youth factor. We have guests with us in the studios to discuss the subject matter. First, of course, would like to welcome Dr. Ademola Are. He's Director of Grassroots Sports, the Federal Ministry of Sports.
Good morning.
Dr. Are, a pleasure to have you join us on the program.
Good morning.
Okay, and then we also have with us, of course, a sports analyst who is current chair FCT Athletics Association, Mike Enahoro. Mike, delighted to have you on the program.
It's a pleasure.
Okay.
And of course, just to add that, Mike, and of course, my next guest, I'm going to introduce a familiar, face on this program, Chika Chukwumerije. We all know him, 3-time champion, Olympian, CEO. Of course, Chika Chukwumerije Sports Foundation and board member, Nigeria Taekwondo Federation. He's also a Beijing 2008 bronze medalist.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for joining us.
It's my pleasure.
All right.
All right. Well, gentlemen, let's. I mean, the whole idea of grassroots means that you start from the very beginning rather than looking at the elite level of sporting competition. Where do we stand at the moment with regard to grassroots sports development? Let's begin with Dr. Are.
Yes, thank you very much. Like you've rightly noted, grassroots is meant to be from the very beginning, and that means school sports. And when you talk about school sports, we always say, the Federal Ministry of Youth and Sports, in one of its departments, school sports come under grassroots sports development. And we always pointed out that the federal government, as it were, cannot go to, for example, the local government to develop sports. Sports is on the concurrent list of all the governments, the 3 tiers of government. So we expect a school in Sokoto to teach the students physical and health education like we used to have it in those days. We expect a school in Lagos to do sports at the secondary school level. But what we find nowadays is that all the 3 tiers, especially the local government and most of the states, are no longer interested in sports. They're only waiting for the federal government to tell them, oh, we're going to have National Sports Festival in Calabar next year. And they start poaching athletes all over the place. Nobody is ready to develop sports. And when we talk of sports development at that level, like we were discussing outside, we also expect the private sector to show deliberate effort to come in and say, okay, yes, we have these talents in Lagos, we have one in Maiduguri, we have one in Abuja. How do we come in to develop that talent? Everybody is only interested in the success of a Chukwumerije at the Olympic level. That is when you see people coming, oh yes, I'm going to give him 10 million, I'm going to give. All that money will do no good to that Chukwumeriji at that level. What we are preaching is, let us go back to the schools and develop sports at that schools. You will remember, or you could recall, even when you were going to schools, you find facilities available in those schools. Nowadays, you see a private school where you pay millions of naira for your children to attend, no sports facilities. If they want to do anything sports, they come to National Stadium. How do we develop sports at the grassroots level if the stakeholders are not doing what they are supposed to do? The federal government at that level is the policy-making body. And because of that, we have zonal offices in all the 6 geographical zones. And these are the zonal coordinators interfacing with the states and the local governments to bring in sports development. We are to organize competitions. We are to try to convince the private sector people, please come and help us. We need to do this, we need to do that. But the private sector people will not just come in, except they see the seriousness in you as an agent of the government. So where do we start from? All hands must be on deck. Everybody must do what it's supposed to do, and not just leaving sports development to the federal government alone.
Okay, let me bring Chika before we take Mike. Chika, I'm starting with you because I want to recollect that you've had a personal experience with regards to how you rose, of course, to becoming an Olympian. And I know that yours was basically self-driven, achievement.
Yes, true. When I think of my childhood, it was actually filled with a lot of sporting activities. So every week we used to go jogging once a day with my dad, and he enrolled us in swimming lessons, taekwondo lessons. And back then there was quite a lot of kiddies tournaments. So even though I came out as an Olympian, I did all the right things, but it was not done knowingly. So there was a lot of training, there were a lot of competitions, and of course when I needed to go here and there, I had someone who could support. I think it's just that simple. If you apply it to the present day, I'll give you an example. My foundation, we have a partnership with the Secondary Education Board, and we also have a partnership with the FCT Sports Council. I also have a partnership with the FCT Taekwondo Association. And basically that's just linking education and sports, because you've got the funding, you've got the personnel you need, then you've got the policy. So when we went to the Secondary Education Board, we said, look, we want to go to schools. Just give us 4 centers, which they did. If the policymaker at the time said no, it won't have been possible. They gave the go-ahead. We went to the FCT Association, we said, look, if we start training these people, we want to start doing tournaments every quarter. And they said, okay, that hall in Area 10, we're going to give it to you for free. And by doing that, we're able to organize tournaments every quarter. And every week we go to the schools, and they give us ladders, cones, and this. So if this program continues for 10 years, that's just grassroots. Every sport has to do it. So I agree with Dr. Demola when he says that it's really not the federal ministry that should go to the corners. The state governments just need the policy, and they need to implement it. My personal experience is that these young people, they are very eager to do any sport activity. It doesn't matter what you bring to them, whether it's traditional wrestling, whether it's chess, whether it's Scrabble. And I remember when we started going to the government schools in 2014, some of them have never even heard of Taekwondo. And when we started, they were so excited by it. And now he's very aware, some of them won medals in Ghana and Senegal this year. And heaven knows where they'll be 5 years from now if we continue. So there really needs to be a synergy. If I use my example, of course, I come from a family of 8. The 8 of us were black belts in Taekwondo. We started when we were really small. And from 8 children, you have 5 that became national champions, 4 became university champions, 2 were African champions, and of course, I won a medal at the Olympics and the Commonwealth Games. So obviously, without knowing it, there was something we were doing right, which is what I've explained, that our training was every week, day in, day out, not just taekwondo, but different sporting activities. And in addition to that, we're having periodic tournaments. So I think if we apply that case to our current situation, then it might be a solution from this current deterioration of grassroots sport development.
All right, Chika, thank you very much. Mike, because you're chair of the FCT Athletics Association,
Yeah.
I would like you to return to some of the issues raised by Dr. Ademola Are with regard to current challenges that face grassroots sports development. What is it that we have identified as some of the most obstinate challenges?
I think one of the things that in every country in the world that you find the situation Nigeria is in, it's two things. The country has not looked at it from an economic development standpoint. And Nigeria is a young country. We tend to forget that Nigeria has a very young population in which its middle range is anywhere between 24 and 37. That's our biggest pool of our population of this 150 million people sitting in age bracket. So if you have human capacity deficiencies in terms of youth unemployment, youth engagement, and youth economic development, these areas, sports is one area that can take them on. China is an example. You see the kids coming out from primary school, line up in concentric rows and do the exercise in the morning. And they used that, Singapore has used that to fill its economic requirement gap. Sports can employ close to a very high percentage of those young people that are currently unemployed. That 24.9% unemployment rate would be filled in sports, in the 13 different sectors in sports: marketing, sales, merchandising, distribution, design, coaching, mentoring, security, even sporting activity. But we have not as a nation looked at sports for economic development and empowering, using that human capital to empower our people to go back to productive work. So what Dr. Are is saying right now is saying government is doing what it does best. The problems are many. They are prioritizing based on economic resources. And they're saying there's pensioners' payments to be made. There is salaries that we are owing. There is a deficit in the oil revenue that's coming in. My derivation has not come. Paris Club money is coming. Out of the 4 billion, I have 17 billion naira debt. But we need to do a stop as a country. We need to do a reset and say, what is going to benefit us the most? If you create the platform for sports in this country, you will find that you will engage more. Let me give you a very positive example that I have studied over the last 4 years. I happen to have worked in it. The LMC, the League Management Company, was created out of the fallout of the Obaseki regime. The whole mess sitting down in there, and you created this small organization led by Ndukai Rabu and Shehu Diko. It worked, and it was structured, and it took in super sports funding, and it ran, and it's running that funding up to this point. From my studies that I've done, it has consistently engaged close to 4,600 people in 19 centers with temporary Saturday and Sunday engagement and work. You have pitch panels, you have ball boys, you have referees, you have securities, you have concessionaires, you have all these people that get short-term employment that are consistently engaged from the grassroots. If the local governments are really looking to do an IGR derivation, look at the human capacity within your environment. One, you would negate and you will stop the unwanted misuse of young people's time. They will be engaged. So you have less criminality, less capacity to be able to do nefarious activities, less misuse of young people's time. And there's a difference between having a job and doing work. You can volunteer and train young children in primary school. If we train you to be able to train young children, you take them as a guide and you train them. Just merely keeping those young children for 3 hours a day will give you work. It is not a job, but it will give you work. So our country has to strategically look at grassroots to reduce the unemployment and misengagement of our young people's time. What Are was saying is that back then, volunteerism was the key to driving grassroots because government never paid.
Mike, let me ask you, because you're chairman of FCT Athletics, so I'm going to stay put with athletics.
Yes.
Because I know in the past, okay, is there a disconnect between our educational policy right now and youth sports development with regards to athletics? Because in the past, people like me were able to get to the level we did in athletics because we had encouragement. The school, curricula was favorable to us. But at a point, a lot more people had to migrate. People like Mary and Yali, for instance. They had to go outside of the country. No, I stopped. I stopped, yes. I stopped because it wasn't in my favor. But others who had the opportunity had to go out of the country to pursue the educational career in addition to their chosen field. So is there a disconnect right now that we need to really look at and, rejuvenate?
The biggest misnomer, and I say this to Nigerians everywhere, the biggest misnomer that we have in this country is saying Nigeria is a football country. Nigeria is not a football country. We are a short sprint and middle distance running country. And we have just made that football is actually our second sport. But because of the investment and the external influences, we have sent more sporting champions. We have had more sporting champions in athletics, and we have raised more laurels in athletics than in football. And the truth of the matter is, until we begin to admit that fact as a country, we will not pay attention to where our successes lie. We can raise 100 sprinters today, as I speak to you. On the NCAA, CCAA, Nigerian universities, we will raise 100 sprinters that will be top 10 for the next 10 years. But Nigeria will not make the top 10 in football in the next 10 years. And that's a fact that we have to recognize and we have to admit, and we have to start putting funding behind athletics. Athletics is the one sport that allows you 16 different disciplines, which can involve more of our children. If you cannot run, you can walk. If you cannot walk, you can jog. If you can jog, you can throw. If you can throw, you can jump. This, and in the Paralympians, it has 109 disciplines. So we can throw a lot of our people into athletics. That was what the colonials knew, and they trained us as a large population country to focus on. They focused us to do athletics. And at some point, we lost that direction until we go back there and absorb more of our children in the grassroots to go back into athletics and support them. We will always have this disconnect.
All right, Mike, what you just said now, we are seeing it already in the South Africans, Namibians, Kenyans,
Zambians,
taking over the short to middle distances. 400 meters record held now by South African. You also have another Botswana athlete who is often chasing down Van Niekerk. So that's the part of the embarrassment. No Nigerian will find 100 meters particularly from there. But let's again return to Dr. Ademolare. Dr. Ademolare, yes, we identified the problem, the challenge that the subnational governments are not investing sufficiently in grassroots sports. Of course, the downside to all of this is we see them, as Mike was talking about, utilizing their Paris Club fund for all kinds of things, buying bulletproof jeeps, SUVs, and so on and so forth. What could the federal government possibly do to incentivize the subnational governments? Let's take, for instance, the local governments. Is there any local government of the 774, anyone that has constructed and operates and runs a mini stadium anywhere? What can be done to incentivize them? Just as you have the UBEC, you do this, we'll give you counterpart funding.
Yes, thank you very much. I think as far back as 4 years ago, when we had former Minister Danusa, there was this program to deliberately construct mini stadia in all the local governments.
At whose cost?
Federal government, just like constituency project. We did this. Then I was a zonal coordinator in Northwest Zone. And the decision of the ministry as at that time was that, look, let us hand over this mini stadia to the local governments in the states. As I'm talking to you today, most of these mini stadia are line wasted. I was in Katsina State, I handed over about 2 to the government, but they are just not interested. It's one thing for me to bring food to your table, it's another thing for you to want to eat that food.
Why aren't they interested from your findings?
Well, they have priorities. You see, everybody, as a government, you have your priorities. Some of them will tell you, no, education is my priority. I want to provide food for my people. Forgetting that with sports, all those challenges you think you are facing will be off the table.
What do we know at this time about colleges of physical education? Because physical education used to be, health and physical education was part of what you studied as a teacher in training, for to get your teacher's grade 2 certificate. Later on, it moved on. They said that you now had colleges of physical education. What do we know about the state of health and physical education training for persons who would, help man some of these things? What do we know about this time? Is it in abeyance?
Yes, it is. I will give myself as an example. When I was in Unilag, I was playing hockey for the country through Union Bank. And we traveled to US for John F. Kennedy International Hockey Tournament. And by the time I came back, Unilag offered me admission. They now said, no, because you did not come back on time, you are going to read physical and health education. I felt ashamed. I said, no, how can I be doing physical and health education?
They used to call it jumpology.
So I had an uncle who came and said, look, you are into sports, go and read PE. And when you go out to do your practicals, you put on white knicker and you see people passing by, coming from the law faculty, mass comm, and
the babes.
And
you didn't want to say that.
So for you to go to the field and start jumping, there is this nostalgia that how can I read PE when my friends are doing mass comm and law, yes. But today, if you look back, you will thank God for that you read physical and health education, because those people that actually read other programs are now struggling to come and do your job for you. One of the problems we are facing is people that did not actually study sports administration. They believe, I cannot come to this place and start teaching you your job. There are certain things we need to look at. PE is no longer taught in primary, secondary schools. It's no longer, even if it's in the curriculum, they don't teach these children.
No, they do. They do. It's just that maybe the challenge is the capacity of the teachers.
It doesn't follow through. It doesn't carry through.
If it is compulsory,
it doesn't follow through.
If it is compulsory,
yes,
all the students will key into that. We were made to pay for physical education. We were made to pay for knicker and t-shirts.
Yeah, when we were in elementary school, they used to write a PT at the time of physical training.
Yes.
But look, the question is, are there still colleges of physical education that are churning out graduates?
Yes,
colleges of education.
Are they properly engaged?
Yeah.
That's one level. We are pressed for time now, but let me quickly introduce this subject matter. We've been talking about government sponsorship, corporate sponsorship. Chika has already mentioned that. One thing that, again, that has been absent for several decades now. Whatever happened to recreation clubs? Mike is laughing. That's whatever happened to recreation clubs, because some of the great stars you see, on the elite stage around the world, they belong to clubs. Yes. I know a Nigerian. In fact, he taught me one of the games. It belongs. He's been working at a club in Chicago for several years now. Yes. What happened to those clubs, and what can the elite do to rejuvenate those clubs, because that's the grassroots level from which you now begin to rise. Mike and then Chika.
Dr. Are has said it that the enabling environment from the policy, government can't do everything.
That's right.
They've got the policy. They just need to enable the policy. Arrest department says they are interested on grassroots. Make it interesting for a Mike and Nahoro. I have a private program called Kids and Play. Make it interesting for me to be able to access the children. If you put bureaucracy all the time in setting up all of this, it becomes cumbersome. You wouldn't even go and do an NGO in your village because of just the nature of dealing with local government guys who will tell you not to even touch any child. So everyone, it's on the day you begin that your private NGO that you would know that there are regulations. Keep the regulations out of it, keep them as simple as possible, and let everyone, encourage everyone to go back. Ufote-Kaite's memo that stopped federal civil service clubs from engaging people in the early 80s killed it for us. We used to have Water Corporation, NEPA, Nigerian Police, Nigerian Army, Nigerian Customs. It was an engagement, and it encouraged people like Abiola and the rest of us to come in. Aliko today will not put his money in sports to engage anyone because the red tape that it costs for him to be able to say, I want to do a sports club for children all over the country, you will deal with 9,000 different regulations that will not allow you start. Once we get that out of the way, private sector will conveniently and comfortably get in and go ahead and do stuff.
Could you explain the Ufote-Kaite memo one more time? What
there was a memo that said that the federal government needed to pull back from the sponsorship of sports and restrict it to certain aspects. It was written by the secretary to the federal government then, and it reduced the involvement and the investment in sports. And it just limited it to very few things. A small memo, but it was the biggest thing that changed the entire face of sports in Nigeria.
Chika, in terms of clubs, well, we're having the clubs. There are many urban areas in Nigeria today. Well, I mean, if you went to Sapele in those days, you came to Benin, there were 2 clubs, Recreation Club, Benin Club. You came to Lagos, you had clubs all over the place. So what Apapa Club, what happened? And what can be done to return them? These are private sector things.
This is my opinion. It's not actually about forming the clubs. You can as well have the clubs in the schools. They have the numbers there, actually. I think there's quite a lack of passion. So if you have someone that graduated from physical education, and can he actually feed his or family with what that job is going to get? So if you're going to offer me a bank job and I read physical education, then I'll take the one that will feed me first. So even though the banking is not my passion, but this cannot feed me. So as Dr. Ray and Mike has said, we need to actually make it more attractive to these people that can go and get it done. So it's not really about the club as a physical presence. It's actually about the qualified personnel that can get it done. 2, I actually think we need a lot more sports event managers, and I'll explain. Most of our events are participant-driven, not spectator-driven. So, for example, when you come to the National Youth Games, which is going to hold, I think, next month, if there are 1,000 people there, all of them are either participating or they are coaches or they are people related to the sports industry. But if I go to an event in New York and it's a youth games and I see 1,000 people in the crowd, you can be guaranteed that maybe 600 of them are people that are never associated with the sport. Just the way they branded it and did it. So it brings in revenue. And that brings me to the case of we need to organize a lot of events that generates money for each sport. And it brings me back to the quality of personnel we have. So if you like, build a club. I mean, I've already told you how many stadiums they built. And you have cattle running over all over it. So it's not about the building. It's actually about the people, all the people that you need to make it matter. The event managers, the coaches, the admin, the athletes, and all that.
Chika, I'm sorry. Maybe you didn't get me quite right. What is a club? you know, a club has a number of sections. All right, a number of sections.
Like
you have
Ikoyi Club.
Absolutely, you have a number of sections. Then you also have the grassroots program.
Yes.
So that it is from the grassroots. That's where, because the club is by membership.
Yes.
In the first instance, that's the private sector by membership.
Yes.
From that, they will now begin to produce their own, and then you have inter-club competitions.
Yes.
So they gradually begin to move up. So it's like this club is okay. Benin club is taking a recreation club. I think they drink.
Of course, they still do that.
It's taking on
in
a
golf.
They
do that in golf.
That's
and polo.
That's right.
Yes.
We're saying for the other sports, as you mentioned, for athletics, you know, for of course they're doing a few things now in boxing. So how can we get the elite, you know, Dr.
I think the question we should ask here is, what is the role of a parent in mentoring their children to take part in sports? Like he noted, he went out jogging with the father, all of them. And from there they develop. You see, it is at that tender age that these children could be exposed to different sports. If you go to the so-called social clubs, like you mentioned, they only go there for fun, to take beer and relax in the evenings. The parents are no longer interested in carrying the children. Oh, told me, Tokwe, we are going for lawn tennis this evening, or let me take you out for swimming. The parents are no longer doing that.
There is no time. Mike,
yes,
you are into some sort of grassroots, you know, mentoring.
Yes.
And I also know that some ex-internationals have also set up, you know, academies and all that. Like he said, what's the response from parents, and you know, how is it doing?
It's been going well, but it's a drop in the ocean. We have 1,000 children in Kids and Play in Abuja, but it's a drop in the ocean because there are 369,000 children registered in the schools. So if you have 1,000, you haven't even touched the surface at all. And this is something that you need to do as an after-school program. See, after-school program is what made all of us do this, become involved in sports. It was always after school, the time between 2:30 and 6 o'clock.
Yes.
And that period is when you need to focus grassroots development. That is what the truth is. So we would want to encourage more Nigerians. And encourage government to please help to reduce the red tape and allow people like Chika, yourselves, to be able to start a small program, even with 10 children. Parents are ready to be encouraged. But the thing is, where are these programs? There are not enough programs to go around the children that we have in the country.
And Mike, you're also familiar with, again, you've talked about it now, that's the whole notion that Nigeria is a soccer country rather than, you know, otherwise. How do we get our sports marketers to get the right orientation and therefore get sponsors for the other sports?
Transparency in administration. You can't, anybody that is in government administration, don't touch the sponsors' money. Don't touch the sponsors' money. They give you 10 million to organize an event. Use their 10 million to organize their event. Go and raise your own money separately. That's what's driving private sector away. Because they cannot sit down, raise their own money, hard-earned with their customers, and then give you to go and do a tournament of which 50% of it goes to places that cannot be accounted for. Let us go back and be transparent in administrating sponsors' funds. Once you do that, private sector is more comfortable to come back and give you more. So that's just the honest truth.
All right, Mike Naharo, Chairman FCT Athletics Association, we'd like to thank you very much for your contribution as always. And I would also like to appreciate Dr. Ademola Are, Director, Grassroots Sports Development, Federal Ministry of Youth and Sports. Although you were going to say something about boarding house, of course, facilitating grassroots development. We've noted that. Thank you very much for coming. Chika Chukwu Mary J, would like to thank you very much, as always, and of course for your insight. This is Good Morning Nigeria. Let's quickly take a look at developing stories from around the world.
Thank you and welcome to another time to talk about foreign news around the world. The Archbishop of Uganda, Stanley Ntungali, has disclosed that he will not attend the next meeting of Anglican leaders. This is due to the gradual acceptance of same-sex marriage by the church globally. The 62-year-old Ntagali, who is also the bishop of the Ugandan capital, Kampala, says he was not prepared to engage with people who took an unbiblical view of marriage. This is coming after he joined the global leader of the church, Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, on his visit to the refugee camps in the country's north as part of Welby's African tour. Welby also visited Sudan, where he declared the 39th province of the church in Khartoum. Right now, the former Gambian Interior Minister Osman Sonko will remain in the Swiss jail for another 3 months after the country's Attorney General broadened an investigation into whether he committed crimes against humanity. Sonko has been in pre-trial custody since January after the Geneva-based legal group Trial International filed a criminal complaint accusing him of having personally taken part in torture. The Attorney General's office said it had since expanded its probe beyond the original allegations after hearing testimony from witnesses and after additional complaints were lodged against Sonko. He was Interior Minister under former leader Yahya Jammeh from 2006 to 2016 when he fled to Sudan and then to Switzerland, where he applied for asylum in November and was taken into police custody in January. And that's foreign news on Good Morning Nigeria. Bye for now.
All right, let's quickly take a look at the weather forecast for today. It's been raining, okay. We understand that we've got to go Kingsley. And just before we do that, don't forget that